as well, Representatives Amber Mariano and Randy Maggart, and then the Speaker of the House, Chris Sprowls from nearby Pinellas County. And we're excited to be here to be able to sign the budget for this year into law. And if we had had a press conference a year ago talking about what the budget for 21-22 would look like, a lot of people thought that it would get really ugly because you saw a lot of the economic activity go down across the world, not just in Florida and the United States. And there was projections that we were going to have dire straits in terms of the revenue outlook, and that you would see massive cuts to things that we've been working on, like education, environmental protection, all these other things. And that was kind of the conventional wisdom. But we made the decision that as other states kept locking their citizens down, we'd lift people up in Florida. And so, as we were going through the summer and started to get some momentum, even obviously as you're dealing with COVID the whole time, we understood it was important to get our kids back in school. And so we made the decision, I think in June, that every parent in Florida would have the ability to send their kid to school in person when the school year started. And we didn't force the parents, because if a parent wanted to do virtual, we figured, it's fine. I mean, we were confident that it was the right thing to do from a safety perspective, and obviously critical from an academic perspective and a social development perspective. So we were able to do that. We were the only large state in the that had only a handful of states that did, and most of them were much smaller population-wise than us. And so when we did the schools, there was a lot of naysayers. A lot of people, were saying schools need to be closed. They were wrong, and we were right on that, and we're happy that we were right on that. And it's something that if we had gotten that one wrong, you can have a good economy, you can have all these things, but if you'd have gotten that wrong and locked the kids out of school for a year, that would have had lasting consequences for our communities and for our state. So we were happy to be able to do that. And so I think what happened was, we worked hard to get people back to work. You started to see the economy do better than expected in Florida, even as early as last summer. And then we really served as kind of a respite for other citizens of our country and other states that were chafing under these lockdowns. They would just try to get to Florida. Some move permanently, some just ride out the lockdown, some just come for effectively a proverbial breath of fresh air. And so that ended up helping a lot of our hospitality industry. It allowed us to get more people back to work. These restaurants, some of these restaurants now have never done better than they've ever done, in their history. We were just over in New Smyrna Beach. They said first quarter, the best in the history of the restaurant by far. And I hear that a lot of places that I go. But you remember a year ago, you had people like Fauci saying all these restaurants should be closed. And what I have when people come up to me, they say, thank God you didn't listen to Fauci, because we would be out of a job. So we ended up seeing that, and I know a lot of places. I was in the Panhandle recently. They never did better than they have in the last year in terms of the tourism and all these other things. Obviously, you see the property values in Florida. People want to buy homes here, and that's just, I think, as a result of doing it right. So when we came into this legislative session, I knew that we were going to be strong. I think these guys eventually came around to it, but they had been given a lot of forecasts that said that it was going to be very bad. And so, I was just like, look, I have confidence. So we ended up going, and then as the session went on, they got the estimates in April, and it was clear that we were in really, really good shape. So that the budget we'll have today that I'll sign will likely have, once June is up and the fiscal year ends, we'll probably have about $10 billion in reserve. And that's just state money. It's not including any of this federal money. We're at 9.5 billion after May. But what's happened is when they did the estimates in April, April, we took in almost $800 million above estimate. So they're literally doing an estimate in real time, making an estimate for April, May, June, last 3 months of the fiscal year, and they undershot the April by $800 million. May, we think it's going to be at least $500 million that we will have got over what they estimated. And so if you get another half a billion in June, that's going to be $10 billion that we'll have in reserve. That puts us in an awfully strong position to weather any future storms. You would have told somebody that we'd have $10 billion in reserves last year, nobody would have believed. I probably wouldn't have believed you, to be honest with you, and I was the one that was the most bullish. So I think it's a testament to the fact that Florida, has been free. People are free to make decisions and go about their lives. Obviously, these legislators over a number of years have produced budgets, and obviously I've signed a couple budgets. But if you look at Florida, we have, like New York has millions of fewer people than we do. Their budget is over twice the size of Florida's budget because we're very prudent with how we spend money. Our infrastructure is better. Our K-12 performs better. We have the best state university system in the country for 4 years in a row by U.S. News and World Report. So you look at that and you look at the budget that we're signing today, we're doing more for education when a lot of people thought we were going to have to do less. We're doing more for water resources and environment and things that matter to both of our presiding officers very much, way more than anyone thought was possible. We're doing bonuses for all law enforcement, fire, and first responders, which nobody was, a lot of people said we wouldn't be able to get that done. So we've done all these things to meet all these key needs from the state, and yet we do that with the lowest per capita tax burden in the United States. So we're proud of what this budget will accomplish. I mentioned education. We've got almost $2 billion for early childhood education, almost $23 billion for K-12 system. We did do last year the biggest teacher compensation expansion in a generation, and we actually did that and more this year. So they've even added more, and our goal is to get the average minimum salary for teachers, and this is throughout the public, the school districts and the charter schools, to be $47,500. Only 12% of school districts in the whole country have average minimum even above $40,000. So we were bottom half of states, states. Now we're going to be, in the top 10. Hopefully we'll be able to be in the top 4 or 5 when all the dust settles. So we're proud of that, but we're also proud of, because our schools were open. And when we were pushing to do this, you had, oh my God, media was so against the schools. The media wanted to lock the kids out of school the whole year. Let's just be honest. They tried to scare parents over and over again. You had some of these bureaucrats, particularly in D.C., that were fear-mongering, and the data was in. Last June, the data was in. We knew that it was the right thing to do. So we pushed forward. There was a lot of people that were opposed to that. I'll tell you, these superintendents they wanted to get back. Most of the teachers wanted to get back. I know the teachers union sued us to close the schools, but at the end of the day, most of the teachers did want to go back because they understood what a year of virtual would have been like for the students. And so because principals had to work extra hard, the teachers had to work hard, we were able to do $1,000 bonuses for all principals and all K through 12 teachers throughout the state of Florida for public and for charter. So that's a pretty big deal to be able to get that accomplished. We also understand that the issue of mental health has been a perennial issue. It's an issue that's very difficult to tackle in some respects. It's an issue that our First Lady, my great wife, has done a lot of good things for the state on, but we also understood when the pandemic hit, this was throwing a lot of things up in the air, and this has exacerbated problems. But I will tell you,
let's take a quick 2-minute break here on News Now from Fox.
Florida, they would have been way worse had we not had things open. I can tell you that right now, because you look at these other states that continue to do lockdown, continue to keep people out of school and out of work, and those problems are going to mount dramatically. So here in Florida, we understand for our school children it's important. We have $120 million for in-school mental health initiatives, so that's a $20 million increase over last year. And we also have $5.5 million for youth mental awareness and assistance, which the First Lady has been involved with specifically, and we really appreciate that. But then there's another $137.6 million for community-based services for adults and children with mental wellness needs. So all told, you look at all the different agencies that we fund and all the different programs, we got about $2.5 billion for mental health and substance abuse throughout the state of Florida. So we understand it's a challenge, but we're stepping up to meet the challenge. We also gotten a lot of momentum on supporting our water infrastructure and improving our water resources, which is very important for a state that's built around fishing and boating and enjoying the outdoors. And we made a lot of progress my first 2 years as governor. A lot of people thought that given the circumstances that this was going to get whacked and our momentum was going to get derailed. But actually, if you look, there's actually more money for things like Everglades and water resources and water quality than even I asked for in the budget. I think they did even more things, and I know both Senator Simpson and Speaker Sprowls were instrumental in that. So this is going to put us on track. We're going to be able to complete some of these major reservoirs and stormwater treatment areas just within the next couple years that are going to have such an important impact on kind of the plumbing, the natural plumbing of the state of Florida. We also have the first time, I think, certainly in Florida history, I don't know many other states that have done this, we started a program, Resilient Florida, to be able to address the needs that we face as a storm-prone state, as a state that has to deal with a lot of flooding. So we started with $500 million of seed money, and then through the Speaker and Wilton working together, there's going to be a recurring pot of over $100 million that comes in every year. And so these will be local communities can apply for these grants, and you could be able to do things. So we have some areas, they flood all the time. If you had some infrastructure there, you'd be able to potentially mitigate that. And there's a whole host of things that go into that. We're also proud of the amount of money that's been put in for beach renourishment. I mean, it's a very important thing. So we're going to have $150 million for beach renourishment, which is important when you have 1,300 miles of coastline that we're being good stewards of that. One of the things we did when the pandemic pushed a lot of people into remote work, we saw the traffic declined in most parts of Florida. So we accelerated some of these road projects in highly congested areas like in I-4 in Orlando, did one in Tampa, some other places. But then what happened was because they were projecting less revenue, our DOT had to basically delay or plan to delay some of these projects into the future because they didn't know how much money. Well, with the budget today, the work program for the Florida Department of Transportation is fully funded, so we're going to be able to get all these projects on track, and actually, we may even be able to accelerate some. I think we have the resources, the money to pay to accelerate it. I think it's just there's a high demand for these services that I think that'll be probably the one impediment that we end up doing. But this is going to be a fully funded work program, which we're really, really supportive of. And I did mention the bonuses for police, fire, first responders, $1,000 each across the board. That's like 175,000 individuals across the state of Florida. And we understood when COVID hit, there's folks in white-collar jobs could work from home, remote, and God bless you if you did. The people in uniform have to show up every day. They can't keep the streets safe on Zoom. You can't put out a fire on Zoom. You just got to be there. And so they were there from the very beginning, day in, day out. And then particularly with our police, they've been treated horribly throughout this country in some of these communities. And what we said here is we're standing by law enforcement. We're standing by law enforcement. We have your back, and we understand the importance that supporting law enforcement plays in maintaining public safety in those areas that have moved to defund police or just haven't supported their law enforcement. You're seeing crime increase dramatically in some of these places throughout the United States of America. We don't want that in Florida, so we appreciate the service. But so I think because of all those factors, we thought it was important to seek bonuses for all of our first responders, including police. So we're able to get that in the budget here, $1,000 for every sworn law enforcement, firefighter, and EMT in the state of Florida. So that's going to be a really, really big deal. So I think that what this budget shows is that we spend money prudently, but I think we spend it effectively. And I think we're focusing on areas that will really make a difference. Obviously, rewarding some of the folks who've been instrumental in the last year to keep Florida moving forward. Of course, maintaining such a low tax burden, which we're going to continue to do, and then having a lot of money left over in reserves, in case something happens down the pike. And I think we are in, even though there's a lot of good signs in Florida, if you look nationally, I think there's a lot of uncertainty. You see inflation. Look at gas. Gas has gone up tremendously. A lot of the materials that people need to do business have gone up. So you have inflationary pressures. You're just going to have a lot of things. And we just have to be ready. And these are things that are far beyond the control of a state government, of course, but they're things that we're going to have to contend with. And so I think we have an adequate cushion to be able to deal with this. Final thing I'll say before I turn it over to the Speaker and the President, we did about $1.5 billion in vetoes out of the budget. Most of that was back of the bill, and the largest chunk of that was something that I actually requested, was $1 billion to create an emergency response fund. And the idea was, if we have emergencies and you need to pay for response, you don't have to use general revenue. You have a fund, you pay, you get your federal reimbursements back into that fund, and it basically just runs off budget. The legislature agreed. We set it up. The problem is, after they did that, the federal government came with kind of rules and guidance about how the money could be spent that we got from the feds. We were going to use federal dollars for this. And they said, basically, you can't, it's a grant, so you got to do normal procurement. Well, in an emergency situation, you don't do normal procurement. You got to get the money out the door. So it would be totally ineffective to use it for emergency. But then they said that it doesn't apply for a situation like that anyway, so we'd end up assuming a lot of risk and having to battle with the feds. So I think it's a good idea. I'm glad they did it. I would like to do it in the future, but I couldn't in good conscience put that money in there knowing that it was not going to be able to be used for that, and if we did, it was going to be clawed back by the federal government. So that was kind of the major thing, but I think the rest, by and large, we did $1 billion in vetoes last time. But those billion, a lot of that was general revenue vetoes. We did do some trust fund vetoes. So I think this time, because the budget